Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmus und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Beis Shvat, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parashas Boy, and it's the Shabbos. My name is Baruch and Kuliyem. Next Shabbos is Yud Shvat. It's a day which is the Yom Elul of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the beginning of the Deir HaShivi of Chassidus Chabad, where our Rebbe took the leadership, and we're going to connect all this to this week's Parsha Mirz Hashem. But first, as usual, since the war started, we give tzedakah. Mashiach should come now. G'deilet tzedakah shemakareves segula. Now we're going to say a prayer and connect it also to what we're going to speak about today, which is, as usual, one of the most fundamental concepts as we see in Chassidus. How everything is connected is beautiful. And today we're going to say the posuk which says, La Yudem Hoi Sa Oira V'Simcha V'Sosim V'Kor Kein Tiela. No, we say this Mitzvah Shabbos by Havdalah, that for all the Jews there was light and joy, gladness and honor. This week's Parsha, as we've said many times, a remez of Va'era, the first two letters, Vav Aleph, equals 7. 7 of the 10 Makkos were on last week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Boy, Beis Aleph equals 3. And this week is the remaining 3 Makkos. The Makkos of Arba, locust, Makkos Cheshach, darkness, and Makkos Becheres, the death of the firstborn of the Egyptians. So today we're going to speak about oir, light. Is there a more geschmacker thing to talk about than oir? La Yehuda Moisa oira. We had light, and like it says in the pasuk, Ulechol b'nei Yisrael hayu oir b'mashvoisam. While there was darkness by the Egyptians, we had light. So we're going to talk about 3 points I would like to bring out, which is discussed in 3 places, and hopefully it'll be enough time. So, when it speaks about darkness, the pasuk says, Hashem told Moshe, Netei yodcha al hashamayim, v'choshech al eretz Mitzrayim, v'yomesh choshech, and the darkness will become darker. Okay. Now, Rashi brings out 2 reasons why Hashem made the plague of darkness. But today, I want to discuss something which is a whole different level that touches fundamentally on the essentials of Judaism. First, I'll say by heart, Rashi says 2 reasons. One reason was that there were Jews who did not want to leave Egypt, and they passed away, and therefore Hashem brought darkness so that the Egyptians shouldn't see how there were Jews also that didn't merit to go out of Egypt. That's one thing. We'll read it later, possibly in Rashi. Rashi brings another reason so that the Jews had light, that they were able to see where there was darkness by the Egyptians. The Jews were able to go and see where the Egyptians hid their utensils and their treasures, and therefore later when they would have to go out of Egypt, and if they were obedient, and the part of what the Eibishter wanted was they were meant to go over to take and ask the Egyptians for the treasures and take it out with them as they go out of Egypt. So in case an Egyptian is going to say, what are you talking about? I don't have anything. So the Jew will be able to say, I saw it. What are you talking about? And when did he see it? During Makas Choshech. Also, we'll get into that later. Hopefully in Rashi, it's one of the things I want to talk about. But Chassidus Chabad comes along, black on white explicitly, and talks about another concept which basically gets to the essence of Judaism. And I'm going to read you the words. This is from a Maimer Hasidic discourse of the Rebbe Rashab in Tofrei Samach Gimel, page Pei Daled. And these are the words that he writes in the Maimer, in the discourse that starts in the words, Vayemer Hashem al Moshe Netei yodcha al hashamayim, where Hashem told Moshe to bring the plague of darkness. Listen to these words carefully. V'zeu gam kein tam makas choshech. This is also the reason for the plague of darkness. Shehevi al Mitzrayim, that Hashem brought in Mitzrayim, Lohaitzi milibam to usam, to drive out of their hearts their mistake. She'emim, that they say, Misha bara choshech, the one who created darkness, Loi bara or, did not create light. L'chein hevi aleim makas choshech, therefore he brought upon them the plague of darkness. Ube'esei hoya oil Yisrael, sheshimshu shneim ke'echad. We see how the same God, Hashem, could have darkness and light at the same time. This shows that there's one God who created them. Anyways, and see there further how the Rebbe Rashab explains it on page Pei Dalet of that Sefer. So in other words, let's just take it step by step. We spoke about this many times, also very, very fundamental. This week's parsha, we go out of Mitzrayim, the whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. One aspect to it is that here the Jews are going to become a Jewish nation, and the idea of the Jewish nation is that it transcends all limitations. Beyond logic, beyond rationale, no definitions, etc. I.e., we spoke about this many times, there was Avram Avinu and there was Moshe Rabbeinu. And this answers another question that we also spoke many times. Why is it that when Hashem appeared to the Jews by Matan Torah, by the great revelation, Hashem says, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha Asher Etzisicha Meretz Mitzrayim, I am the Lord your God that took you out of Egypt. And he doesn't say Hashem Berasi Shemayim Varas, that he created the world. You'd think that the exodus from Egypt is just one happening, one event in the history of mankind, in the history of the world. But creation includes everything, time, space, and the entire history of the world. So if Hashem is going to introduce himself and say, hello, I am Hashem, the creator. So there's many answers, and really all the answers are interlocked. But one of the answers is that Bereshis bara Elikim, creation of the world, can be connected to Shem Elikim, Elikim b'gematria teva, nature. But Anoichi Avaya Elikecha is talking about Anoichi Misha Anoichi, the essence of Hashem himself. Havaya, the shame of Yud Kei Vav Kei Shem HaMeforish, the high name that shows on Bleakvul, infinity, not finite. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. Avram Avinu, the first Yid, Echad Hoya Avram, was alone against the whole world. El Givena Echad Dikir, as Chassidus says, his point, his mission was to spread the idea of Hashem is one. There's one Hashem. That was his idea. But that idea itself could mean, like for example, if you go to a regular person, let's say, I'm just going to give you an example, and you say, do you believe in God? Like in the American coins, in God we trust. So most people, let's say, for argument's sake, will say, yes, they do believe in a God. What's God? It's a force, it's a power, and for lack of a better word, Mother Nature. They see clearly how nature beats anything that is man-made. Right now, and it could be I mentioned it recently, I'm not sure, we see with the wildfires in California, Hashem Yirachem, it's the year 2025. We're so sophisticated, we're so advanced. We accomplish so many amazing things. But a simple fire in the year 2025 could wipe out an entire neighborhood, and we couldn't deal with it. So in other words, even a regular average person understands that we have the forces of nature that beat anything that's man-made, and no one can control nature 100% because it's from Hashem himself. So now let's say if somebody looks at Hashem, a goy, God, and they say, what is God? Mother Nature. But what about, could Hashem make 2 + 2 = 5? Could there be fire and water together? Etc., etc., etc. Things that defy all the laws of nature, beyond nature completely. That the Egyptians could not agree upon. And this, as we said many times, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Pare and Pare said, who sent you? Hashem sent you. Who is Hashem? Mashmoi. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Eka she'eka, I am what I am. In other words, not anything related to the world. If we say Hashem as a manager, Hashem as a director, Hashem as a controller, Hashem as a boss, Hashem as a master, Hashem as a conductor, okay, all that they understand. There's a force, and the definition of that force is that it's connected to things of this world and created things of this world. But what about something that transcends it? What's that? The definition of this Hashem is that it has no definition that they can't relate to. Or what about a Hashem that can make things that are opposite, paradoxical, or contradictory that they couldn't agree on? And this is V'yodu kini Hashem, as Hashem told Moshe, that the Egyptians will realize that there's a level which transcends the world completely. The truth is, Goyim don't have a shaykhus to that. As Chassidus explains, Goyim have a shaykhus to Shem Elikim, a low level of godliness. That's Hashem, the way He deals with the world. And Dafka Yid is a shaykhus to Shem Havaya. But now let's take this. First, let's go back for a second. Over here, what he's saying is that Lohoitzi Melibam Teusam, there were actually those in the world at the time of Matan Torah, at the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim, that they believed that there's more than one God B'chlal. There's different forces. There's not one Rishuyis. There's not one power. There's not one force. That's not even that they believed in one God, but I'm just saying in general. So first of all, this is what he says in the Maim over here, that there's people that believed in opposing deities or multiple deities. There's different forces that are going on. Like it says in the Maim over here, there's one force that creates fire, there's another force that creates water, there's one force that creates day, and there's one force that creates night. Okay, now, and this was going to show, no, there's only one. But let's take it deeper, and this is the real Chassidus and the real Vort and Avodah. And that is Havaya Velikim Kulachad. As we explained many times, that by the Eibishter, Nes and Teva are exactly the same. Havaya Velikim Kulachad. Anoichi, the essence, is the source of Havaya and Elikech. Now this is really, really the ultimate of what means Yitzias Mitzrayim, transcending all limitations. Even the concept of higher, lower. In other words, a person can mistakenly think, we have Hashem, and He Taka is the one that sets up a system, and He made a system that this is higher and that's lower. Or we say, no, the truth is, it's all one. And the difference in Avodah, as the Rebbe explains in many places in Likutei Sichos, that you have to realize that the whole shlichus, the whole purpose is, let's say we're talking about in the language of darkness, that even what's seemingly darkness, you should realize is really light. Darkness can refer to somebody, there's sometimes where a person has a mood where he's light, he's happy, he's full of joy. But there's a time where he has darkness, where he's more melancholy, more sober, more serious. You have to look at everything. Havaya v'elikim kulachad. I have to bring the light into the darkness and show that darkness and light is not a contradiction. We know how to use out darkness. We see the positivity there. We see the advantage there, that the darkness itself becomes light. And this is the message over here, that according to what he's saying, according to Chassidus, that ultimately there's only one Hashem, Eined Mulvadei. There's nothing really higher, there's nothing really lower. And we're learning about this also in the Maimer of Basi Lagani this year, that there's Lamaila, Maila, and then Ketz. We'll call that higher and higher to no end, or Lamata, Mata, the Tachas, lower, lower to no end. But really it's all the same, it comes from one source. So that's one message. According to Chassidus, in why there was this plague of darkness, and like he says in the Maimer, V'zeu gamkin tam makas choshech, to realize that the darkness is really light, and the light could be darkness, and it's all godliness, it's all divinity. We just have to know how to bring out the divinity in everything equally. Okay, so that's mamish. We're talking about the essential concept of Judaism in a theological level of Chassidus. And that was the point, as the Rebbe Rashab says over here in the Maimer, that's the point of Makas Choshech, to introduce this concept in the world that there is no difference. There's one force, there's one power, there's one real reality, higher than darkness and higher than light. That's really the same power and force that's giving light to both, and therefore could unite both. And that gives a Yid a power to be able to go into the darkness and illuminate the darkness forever. Because it's not really darkness, it's all one source, one power that creates both. Okay, that's one thing. Now, another point, which I'm going to say, this is one of the most famous Torahs of the Rebbe, and we'll say it now because this is where Rashi said the word, that during Makas Choshech there was a darkness, and the darkness was there for some Jews that were not willing and not interested in being redeemed, so the merit of the whole idea of redemption could not work for them because they were anti-redemption. So the Rebbe says, in the famous, this is one of the Rebbe's most famous Torahs, that in the Aggodah we say, that we tell the Rasha, you should know, Ilu Hoya Sham Lo Nigo, that if you would have been, you're such a bad guy, this is a little pshat, you know, you're the problem. People like you, at the time of the Exodus, they weren't even redeemed. Because it says over there that during Makas Choshech, many people passed away. That's how some person can learn pshat in the Aggodah, that since this Rasha is a Rasha, he's a bad guy, he's argumentative, he causes all the problems, he's so difficult and annoying, so we have to tell him, you know what, we don't need people like you. You cause all the problems. The Rebbe comes along and says a pshat. It's very famous by now. And the Rebbe learns pshat. We have to tell the person, Ilo hayasham lo hayanigo. If you would have been by the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, you wouldn't be redeemed. But today, that was before Matan Torah. But now, after Matan Torah, everyone is part of it. In other words, the Rasha of today that comes to the Seder table, we have to embrace him. We have to mekarev him. We have to hug him. And we have to tell him, we are incomplete without you. Every single person. By Matan Torah, Anochi Hashem Elekecha. From the time of Matan Torah, Hashem chooses every single Jew on an individual level without any exceptions. There's no exceptions. It's a deeper level of intimacy, a deeper level of bond, a deeper connection. So therefore it's important, when we learn this parasha, and we talk about that there were some Jews that didn't go out of Egypt, we have to immediately clarify and say, that was then, before Matan Torah, but now it's different. Because of Matan Torah, we have a deeper relationship. Now I want to say one more point. This is what I'm going to say now is a sikha of the Rebbe in Chelik Lamed Aleph, where the Rebbe explains about what was Makas Choshech. And the Rebbe goes into a Rashi and a Medrash. There's different ways to learn pshat what happened. What happened was that it became dark by the Egyptians. And the miracle was that over here the darkness was a whole different nature of darkness. It had substance, as Rashi says, vayomesh, that vayomesh, you could touch it, it was tangible, and they became paralyzed, they couldn't move, etc. See Rashi. That's one level to learn pshat. But according to the Medrash Mechilta, the pshat is that what happened over here was not only that the Egyptians had darkness, and by us was just regular light, but much greater than that, we didn't have stam light. We had a light like X-ray vision. That even, what does it mean that we saw where they had their money and their gold and silver and the treasures? Not only that we could walk around and see what was in open, but even if they had buried treasures, and even if it was uncovered, it was in barrels, we were able to see through the barrel and into the ground, supervision, where they hid the treasures. So the Rebbe goes into a whole sikha about why Rashi doesn't say that pshat, see there. But the point is that the Eibishter makes miracles one way or the other. How many miracles he makes, whether it's a complete additional miracle so that you should be able to fulfill your shlichus, or whether it's only the miracle on the part of the Egyptians, the Makkah, that they had such a strong darkness. The point is, the Eibishter makes miracles, he gives us powers, so that we should be able to carry out our shlichus, no matter what it is. And let's go with the pshat that we're saying that there was that miracle, that it wasn't only a miracle that we had light, but it was a light that was a supernatural light, supervision, X-ray vision. We could see through walls. So whilst the Egyptians had blackout, it's the first blackout recorded in the Torah, we had supervision. Now, by the way, as a side point, there's a Mechilta, a Medrash that says a pshat. Later on in the Parsha, it says that we found favor, the Jews found favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and therefore they gave it to us willingly, all of their possessions. So according to the Medrash, what does it mean that we found favor in their eyes? It goes back to what it said in the beginning of the Parsha by Makas Choshech, that none of the Yidden took any of the possessions during Makas Choshech. So I was just thinking about it, the contrast of the world. When you have a blackout, every single time there's been a blackout, there's been crime, terrible crime. Wherever there was a blackout in history, there was terrible crime, people took advantage, etc., etc. What do we see in the Torah? We see in the Torah, by the original blackout, there was no crime whatsoever. The Yidden didn't take advantage whatsoever. And we were the ones who were really, really victims. The ones who were taken advantage of, oppressed, tortured, whipped, murdered. And nevertheless, we didn't take anything away from the Egyptians. And it was because of that the Egyptians were so impressed. Wow, every single Yid could have done what they wanted to the people who were previously the ones who oppressed them and tortured them and killed them. They could have walked away with who knows what, and they didn't walk away with anything. So that's what it means that they found favor. We found favor in their eyes, that afterwards, when we came to leave, they were happy to give us things. They were so impressed with the Jew. Anyways, so let's get back to the vort over here. The vort over here is that when it comes down to it, like we see in the story of Chanukah, that the Eibishter made an extraness because he was Chaviv in Yisrael. The same thing's over here. We're saying that when it comes to a situation where a Jew needs help, or even if he doesn't need it, the point is, even if you don't need it, the Eibishter will give you the double-powered supernatural miracle in order to make it easy for you. And Yesh Shleima, this is the remez to the words boy. Just I like Ramazim. Boy, we said before, equals 3. Maybe boy could equal Beis Oir. There was double light. There was a light. The fact that we had light, we were able to see, and the Egyptians weren't able to see. But not only that, Beis Oir, there was a double-powered light that was able to see through walls, see through the ground, see through barrels, in order for us to accomplish our shlichus, to make sure we'll be able to elevate all the sparks when the time came to, in case the Egyptian would say that I don't have anything. And this is connected amazingly in tomorrow's Hayom Yom, the Hayom Yom of Gimel Shvat. He says over there that the Tzemach Tzedek wrote about the Sefer Torah Or, which, by the way, that's the first lesson. What does it mean, Or Torah? The Gemara says, La Yehudim Hoysa Oira Oira Zu Torah. So the lesson we have to take for this parsha is, learn more Torah. Kinei mitzvah Torah Oir. It has to illuminate our life. It'll make your life different in the darkness. You'll see things, you'll understand things, you'll appreciate things. It's sight itself, but not only regular sight, Beis Oir, it's a double light. It'll be able to give you clarity in the greatest darkness that you can imagine and see things that no one else can see. So in that Yom Yom of Gimel Shvat, it says, it's words of the Tzemach Tzedek, where he's talking about the Sefer of the Alter Rebbe called Torah Oir, and he says, V'shema mechaber noloi, the name, the author of the Sefer Torah Oir is Shnei Oir. It's appropriate, it's befitting, it's beautiful. And he says, K'moi v'ahavta b'gematria beis pomim Oir. The name Shnei Oir could be split up. Shneir, the name Shneir could be split up to Shnei Oir, two lights. And the gematria, the numerical value of the word Shnei Oir is 2 times Oir, which is 414 is Shnei Oir, and the word Oir is 207. 207 times 2 is 414. And he says that V'ahavta is 2 times Oir. So he doesn't explain why V'ahavta is 2 times Oir. But maybe you could say, number one, in the learning, the idea why the Alter Rebbe is called Shnei Oir, 2 lights, is because the light of Nigla, the Torah, the revealed part of Torah, and the hidden part of Torah. So I imagine that there's a love of just learning Torah, Nigla Torah. That's one level of love. But really, to get the full love, Beis Pa'amim Oir, is V'ahavta, when you really want, when you learn Pnimius HaTorah, and you appreciate the inside story a whole different level. As for example, today we demonstrated that according to Chassidus, the reason for the miracle of Machas Choshech is to teach us a whole different dimension of God, which is the infinity of Hashem. In other words, like that the definition of Hashem is no definition, as we said before. So it's a whole different story. It's about the nature of Hashem himself. If we learn Pashto Pshat, Machas Choshech means because there's something that we have to accomplish in this world. So therefore Hashem gave us a tool, a double light. But if you're learning it according to Chassidus, it's a whole much deeper level. So in any case, so the Rebbe should help every single one of us. Every single one of us should be blessed that there should be light in our dwellings. But it shouldn't only be a single light. It should be a double light. And the double light is V'gematria V'ahavta. It will bring us to a greater love. So it goes both ways. Hashem gives us a double light, even though we might not necessarily need it, because it was great love to us. And that reciprocates in our part, that V'ahavta, we love Hashem more. Amen, 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 Kein Yehi Rotzen. And this is also connected to Yud Shvat, that the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America and continue with the Rebbe. The Yud Shvat is connected to both the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, which is a modern world, a city life, where everyone thought before Chassidus and Yeshivas came to America, they looked at America as the Treif of Medina. It was Treif. It was considered, how we're going to bring Torah as a center of Torah, as it was in the world, Europe before World War II. And the end is, Baruch Hashem, we have Beis Oir. We're able to go into a modern world, into a secular world, into an environment which might be completely opposite seemingly, and we take the question and it turns to an answer. We take the contradiction and it turns into a proof. And that's what it means that even in something which seems to be darkness, we bring out the light. And the Eibishter sees the way we do our shlichus in elevating all the netzutzis, wherever we are in the world, as we went out of Egypt, after we elevated the sparks of Egypt, and it was through the light, so too it should be now. Take of Mad Mamish, Begula Mitzvah Shlema, Amen. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.